The compost is made up of soil, dead plants, and food scraps. Inside the pile, red wriggler worms are busy eating and turning these ingredients into castings, which the students call poop. Compost is mixed into the garden bed to provide food for seedlings. So the compost is the dead plants and the food scraps that the plants use to grow. Every day, one student is asked to take a bucket of food scraps from luncheons and snacks and dump it into the compost pile. In early spring, Miss Sue asked the students to make a book with pictures they cut out from seed catalogs. These are the flowers, fruits, and vegetables that the students will like to grow. Later, she and the students will decide where to plant them. Looks like they're doing a great activity, making a collage out of the magazine pictures. Students enter the garden through an arbor. It's spring and there are lots of chores to be done. Depending on the weather, some classes are held in the open classroom, the garden, or greenhouse. So think about would you like to attend an outside classroom or an outdoor classroom? I think it would be fun too. Let's continue reading. Miss Sue's husband Will designed the layout of the garden. College students Paul, Danielle, Autumn, and Allie volunteered to guide the children in the garden projects. A lot of water is needed to keep the garden healthy. When it rains, water flows off the roof, down a drain pipe, and into an underground tank called a cistern. A solar panel on the roof of the outdoor classroom creates electricity to run the pump that draws water from the cistern. One of the students' favorite jobs is watering the garden. Miss Sue fills the colorful watering cans for them. So, scholars, it's very important that if you have a garden, that you provide plenty of water for the plants. Another group of students plant squash seedlings. Danielle helps a student transplant a tomato seedling. Once the seeds and seedlings are in the ground, the beds are watered and covered with mulch of straw to keep the soil from drying out. I wonder what a seedling is. I think a seedling is a small seed that grows into a plant. You're doing a great job. Let's continue reading. Flower, vegetables, and fruits are planted in the beds of rich composted earth. A teepee made of bamboo stands in the middle of the garden. Some students plant bulb bean seeds at the base of each pole. The plants will grow up the teepee and sprout their pods. Meanwhile, in the morning shade of the school, Paul hands out salad green and flower seeds to plant in a waffle bed. The bed's low walls of adobe bricks help keep water in. When it's still cold outside, some seeds are planted in the greenhouse. There, students fill small plastic pots with rich soil and plant a seed in each. The pots are left in the greenhouse where the sun warms them. Soon, tiny seedlings begin to pop out of the soil. When they are bigger and the weather is warmer, the plants will be transplanted into the garden beds outside. So that greenhouse plays a big role in helping those plants to grow when it's cold outside. There are lots of things in the garden to write and draw about. An easel in the middle of the garden invites anyone to draw what they see or write down their thoughts and experiences. So over here you see the students are drawing about what they see or their observations that they notice while in the garden. They're doing a great job, just like I know you would too. Pill bugs, also called roly-polies, gophers, and even garter snakes can be found living among the garden's plants or tunneling in its soil. Many different creatures live in the garden or come by to visit. Crickets, ladybugs, grasshoppers, and beetles fly, hop, or crawl about. In the early spring, a teacher orders butterfly cocoons by mail. When they arrive, the students put the cocoons in a net cage to raise them in the classroom. When the butterflies emerge, they are taken to the garden and released so they can pollinate the plants. Even when the students aren't at school, there's a lot going on in the garden. A post with holes drilled into it become nesting boxes for mason bees, which don't sting. Birds can eat at the feeders. Worms are busy eating and making the compost pile. Flowers produce a sweet liquid called nectar. When a bee or a butterfly goes into a flower to drink the nectar, powder called pollen sticks to them. When they fly into the flower, the pollen rubs off. Pollen allows the flower to make the seeds that will grow into flowers, fruits, or vegetables. This process is called pollination. So, scholars, when you see all that dust in the springtime on your cards and on your driveways, that's called, or part of the process is called pollination. You're learning a lot today. Let's take a look at this photograph. I wonder what these children and adults are doing here. What do you think they're doing? I think you're right. It looks like they're building a plant box and they're planting seedlings. Let's continue reading. Radishes are harvested in the spring. Miss Sue asked some students to pick the radishes. After washing the dirt off them, the children bite into the bright red vegetables. One girl finds hers too spicy and drops it in the compost pile. More food for the worms. There are many different plants in the herb garden, such as basil, tarragon, lemon balm, chives, sage, lemon verbena, and Egyptian walking onions. Every plant has its own taste and smell. Adobe is also used to coat the horno, the traditional oven used to bake bread. Every spring, the horno in the corner of the outdoor classroom gets a fresh coat of adobe. Isn't that neat? We're learning a lot today from reading this story. Let's continue reading. While the plants are growing during the warm spring days, there is still a lot of work to do in the garden. Students mix sand, dirt, water, and cut up straw to make adobe bricks. The bricks are used to make the low walls for waffle beds. In the Southwest, adobe bricks are still used to build homes. After a hot fire burns down in the horno, the coals are leveled and the pizza goes in. Yummy. When the sizzling pizza is taken out, a group of hungry gardeners appears. The slices disappear like magic. Fortunately, there are more pizzas to come. So this object is called a horno in this country. What do you think it's called at our house? You guessed it, it's called a stove or a baking oven. You're doing a great job listening. That pizza looks delicious. By August, many of the fruits and vegetables are ripe. Cooking and eating becomes an ongoing activity in the garden. A father helps the children make pizzas on one community day. First, they mix and punch the dough. Then they roll it out with a rolling pin and pour oil onto the flat dough. Ripe tomatoes are cut up and go on top. And last, of course, is the grated cheese. That looks good. Garden chores continue onto summer school. School is closed, but the garden is a beehive of activity. It provides the setting for music and gatherings of children, grown-ups, friends, and families. The music fills the garden with joy. Looks like they're having a good time in this picture. On special afternoons and weekends, the garden becomes a place where the school community gathers. Students come back with their parents, sisters, brothers, grandparents, and friends. They compost, seed, plant, transplant, weed, water, and dig. By now, the flowers are blooming and the beds are green. The garden is flourishing with much care. And in this illustration here, you see an illustration of a hollyback, which is a type of flower that's in the garden. Cabbages are a real challenge to pick. Their long, strong roots test the strength and stamina of some of the bigger kids. Miss Sue shows some children how to harvest potatoes. Using a shovel or a trowel, the students carefully dig down next to the stem. Since potatoes spread out as they grow, digging must be done carefully so that the shovel does not cut into them. Later, Allie helps them identify the different kinds of potatoes they have harvested. By September, most of the tomatoes are ripe. Each student is given a limit as to how many they can pick so there are enough left for later classes. As the fall goes on, the days start getting cooler. Some of the tomatoes are still green. Allie shows the students how to ripen green tomatoes by putting them in a paper bag with the banana. That's a cool process. One of the garden beds are planted in a traditional Native American way. It's called a three-sister garden. Corn is planted together with pinto beans and squash. The bean vines grow up the corn stalk. The corn and the squash leaves shade the soil to keep it moist. Pinto beans are harvested after the pods dry up and turn tan. Summer is over and another school year begins. The leaves on the trees are turning color, and many of the garden fruits and vegetables are ready to be picked. Students take turns disappearing into the teepee to pick pole beans from the vines. Boy, does that look fun. Let's keep reading. The last community day of the year brings students and families together to prepare the garden for winter. The air is crisp and cold. Frost has turned the trees to gold. The green plants of summer are shivered and brown. Dead plants are yanked out of the ground and put into the compost pile. The harvest becomes a chance for Miss Sue to quiz the students on the variety of crops the garden has produced. This makes a game of the quiz, placing the answers face down on slips of paper under each fruit, vegetable, or herb. In the Three Sisters garden, the strawberry corn is ready for harvesting. The ears are taken off of the stalks, husk, and the kernels picked off the cob and saved in a jar. They did a lot of work in this story. Do you think you would like to have a school garden at your school? I think so, scholars. What is your favorite part of this story? Make sure that you respond at the end of this story. I hope you enjoyed this story, scholars, and maybe one day you can participate at a garden at your school. Have a great day.